Welcome to the Troubled Artists Podcast, Episode 4, Amy L. Bernstein.
Welcome back to the Troubled Artist Podcast. Today I am here with author Amy L. Bernstein. So Amy L. Bernstein is an award-winning author, a former journalist, and a professional nonfiction book coach helping authors to find their best path to publishing. She teaches writing and creativity workshops and brings an empowering message to writers and multimedia artists around the world. Her nonfiction book, Wrangling the Doubt Monster, Fighting Fears, Finding Inspiration, won first place from BookFest 2025 for self-help and inspiration. So thank you again, Amy Bernstein, for being on the show. So before we begin, I do like to ask this question. Tell us in your own words, who is Amy Bernstein?
Well, there's more than one of me out there. My name, it turns out, is reasonably common, surprisingly enough. I am, a seeker. I'm always looking for ways to do new things, learn new things, connect with different kinds of people all over the world. And I communicate, my passion and my soul and my interests primarily through my writing, but then also through conversations like this, which I also love doing.
I am curious to know, just like your upbringing as an author, like how did that come about? Was it something that you found very early on in your life, or was it something that you found later on in life? Just tell us about that.
I think that writing is just about the only thing I was ever able to do consistently well for the most part. I'm terrible at mathematics. I don't have good spatial understanding. I get lost really easily, even in my own neighborhood. So if I rule out all the things that I cannot do, writing is one of the things that I sort of kind of can do. But on a more serious level, I think it's just one of those things. I know I wrote short stories, as a child, and it's just I was a lifelong reader and just really gravitated toward writing as the thing that I felt excited about, passionate about, and just found a way to kind of make sense of the world by putting words on paper.
So what would you say is like one of, or just like some of the highlights that you've had so far in your career as an author?
Well, it's always exciting when you get a book published, when somebody wants to take what you made up and worked on so hard, and they're going to play a role in sharing it with the world. So that really is exciting. I've published 4 different books with 4 different publishers. I've published a couple of my own in addition to that, and I'm working on a new one now. And um, that's exciting and gratifying. But really, the thing that matters the most is connecting with readers, because I write to be read. Most people write to be read. And when readers tell you what a book meant or what a story meant, those are absolutely the best moments. It's that connection. I think, as I said earlier, I do write to kind of make sense of the world, and it's my way of communicating with the world. And when you connect with the reader, you really kind of enter something shared together, and that's a really exciting moment, exciting place to be. So for me, those are always the highlights.
What are like some of those moments that you have to like go through just to stay motivated when it comes to writing?
Yeah. Anyone who pursues writing seriously, meaning as a career or as a business, consistently over time, or this is true of any art form, you're going to run up against a lot of rejection and criticism and bad reviews and all these things that happen. And you have to remember that you're making your art first and foremost for you, because it's deeply necessary and sort of essential to who you are as a person. It's how you function in the world, just as a human being. What we get from the rest of the world, we have no control over, and these things are going to happen. You're going to hear things that make you unhappy and make you insecure, and you have to just be open to letting all of that in, because the good stuff doesn't reach you unless some of the less good stuff reaches you as well. So I've become much more philosophical about this over time. That doesn't mean that rejections don't still sting, but I think that I've begun to put this in a broader perspective. But you have to be prepared for this, and you can't take it deeply personally, even when that's how it seems.
Yeah, I understand. Rejection, is something that everyone deals with in life. You can't take that rejection very personally, or you can't let that hit you so deeply that you just decide to quit and do something else, because it's going to be tough. But if you truly love doing it, you're going to overcome that rejection and keep moving forward. So, and it seems like you are also doing that. I do wish you continued success on that. Um, what sparked your mission to combat artistic self-doubt?
I have been a self doubter my entire life, and it's taken me a long time to realize all the ways I held back from taking chances, from doing things, from just sort of plunging ahead, from committing to something or from continuing something because I just kept telling myself, no, this isn't for you. You're not good enough. You shouldn't do this. You should go do something that's just more sort of safe and normal. And so I have really been so full of self doubt for so many years that when I look at it, I realize what a block it's been. And part of what I'm devoting the last part of my life to is working with other people and helping them to realize that it doesn't have to be that way. And I'm glad I've finally come to that realization, but it has taken me a very long time. So I know self doubt.
Um, could you share some strategies to manage that self-doubt creativity, that self-doubt creativity, or just any like advice when it comes to publishing that you may have written in one of your books?
Yes. So in Wrangling the Doubt Monster, which is the book of inspiration for every self doubting creative, I make sure that artists feel seen when it comes to doubt. And my big point with the book, and my big point in a lot of my creativity consulting practice, is that we cannot banish doubt. It's there. It's in us. It's part of the human condition. But you can walk with it. You can create a mindset shift that permits more than one thing to be true at the same time. So I can share a couple of really specific strategies then, if I may.
Sure, yeah.
One is learn how to change the channel in your head. We will always, the negative voices in our head, the self criticism, the doubts, the anxiety, these things will always win if we let them because they're very good at commanding our attention and even our central nervous system. But you also have inside you all the memories of all the things that you have done well, that where you have exhibited your competence, where you have succeeded, where you have even exceeded your own expectations. So in changing the channel, you need to consciously allow yourself to not only listen to the doubts and the self-criticisms and all those kinds of things, but also to remind yourself of what you're good at and that you'll continue to be good at those things and even get better. So we have to sort of change the channel in our heads. That's one thing, and that's an important mindset shift. Another thing is not to be fooled and lulled by all the false flags that are portrayed by social media about what success looks like. Those are not the right aspirational targets for any artist, particularly anybody starting out. And it's so important to remember, which social media wants us to not remember at all, that there's only one of you. Only you can make what you can make. And that your own superpower really is that nobody has your brain or your imagination. And so you really can't let these social media symbols of success and wealth and fame and physical perfection and all these things and being the top of the top of the top, you can't let those things be the model for you. You've got to really privilege yourself, put yourself first. That's really important thing to remember. Another important thing to really focus on when you're trying to combat self-doubt is to focus back on your why, your own why. Remind yourself why you're doing the work that you're doing or that you want to do. And you could be a major league athlete, or you could be an entrepreneur, or you could be a writer or a painter, but you're going to go all in on something that you love and something that really lights you up and gets you out of bed in the morning. This is your why, and it's what keeps you passionately connected to this work and letting all that rejection sort of cycle through you, and you have to keep going. So it's so important to stay in touch with that. Just a few more things if I can mention them.
Sure, yeah, yeah, go ahead.
One is it's really important to gather your allies and keep them close and to distance your adversaries. And what I mean by that is even people who love us and people we trust are often going to say, why are you doing that? Why are you spending so much time on that? You know, you're never going to make any money doing that. Have you finished that book yet? Why is it taking you so long? You know, I don't know. I really think maybe you should put this aside and try something else or get back to X. You were always good at X. And, you know, these are the voices that are only going to exaggerate and actually validate your own self-doubts. It's like a bad echo chamber. You have to see this because this happens all the time. And you have to lovingly distance yourself from these people who in fact are not your champions. They really are functioning as your adversaries. And you really need to find who your true allies really are. Who are the people, who are the communities, what are the institutions that are going to support and encourage you every step of the way through the ups and downs and remind you of your own capability. That is such an important thing to do for anyone leading a creative life. And then the final thing that I would mention is changing your relationship to what risk and reward look like. Because our culture prizes efficiency, a really fast return on investment, but anytime you set a really ambitious plan in motion, you know, you really can't, your doubts are going to kick up when those conventional measures of success don't materialize in the first 5 minutes, you know, whether that's profit or quick external validation or something of that sort. So you've got to uncouple this notion about taking risk from these traditional rewards and the traditional timelines of things happening fast. Like if it doesn't happen right away, it's not going to happen. That is not true. The world is full of artists who are having their first exhibits in their 70s and 80s. So you have to separate yourself from that and view risk and reward as something that you pursue outside of these cultural time constraints that we argue in. These are some of the things, these are some of the mindsets that creative people can really learn by and benefit from if they can really sort of put them into practice.
How can midlife artists reignite their creative passion? Like if they are kind of in like that sort of writer's block or they just are struggling. So how can they sort of reignite that creativity?
Well, first, I mentioned a moment ago about kind of staying in touch with your why. So it's really important to kind of rediscover or reconnect to your why. What is that art form that you were so excited about when you were 10 or 15 or 26 or 32 or whatever that you're not doing anymore? Why did you love it so much? How did it make you feel? So staying connected to that or getting connected to that by just thinking about it, even if you're not practicing it yet, is such an important way for you to take a step toward that reconnection or that, you know, reigniting of the passion. Also, you know, midlife is it the perfect time to take new chances and new risks because by now you've got some maturity and some perspective that life goes up and down, that nothing is perfect, that in fact things don't necessarily happen when you snap your fingers. And so this is the perfect time to leverage that perspective and use it to your advantage by trying something new, by taking fresh risks, recognizing that, you know, this is going to take time to unfold, right? That this is a discovery process. You may still have ups and downs, but midlife is a great time to do that because you've got some firm sort of guidelines and guardrails and boundaries in place in your life, and you can sort of operate from that position going forward, as opposed to being, you know, 19 or 20 and not really understanding kind of where you are in the world at all, which is a different place. Also, it's so important if you're seeking to reignite your creative passion a little bit later in life that you seek out your people, find your community, who is going to support you, as I was saying a moment ago. And that can be also, you can find these people, find this community through workshops, through courses, a certificate program, a new degree program, or frankly, folks who gather at the library because they have a like-minded interest. But it is so important to find your people and your community because you don't need to go this alone, and you'll feel so supported if you can do that. And don't forget that, you know, you can take small steps. You don't have to make these changes all at once. You can try something, and if it doesn't work out, you can try something out, and you can go forward in small increments. You don't have to make radical shifts in your life all at once.
So, in terms of people wanting to uh, be an author and maybe or even like an artist of some sort, what are some of those critical steps in transitioning to a creative career?
Well, one thing I would suggest, which is going to sound counterintuitive, I would say focus on process before you focus on goals. And what I mean by that is dial into how you want to feel during this transition and what do you really want to be doing and what's not in your life now that needs to be for you to feel more nourished. I think I'm referring to those things as sort of like process steps, but I think it's so important to start there as opposed to immediately going toward, well, so in 6 months from now, I'm going to have rented a studio, I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be doing that, and in a year from now, I will be X. That's fine, but I don't think that that's where you want to start because that is going to ratchet up your anxiety. It's going to trigger a lot of self doubt when things don't go exactly the way you envisioned them in terms of goals. So I think that if you can manage this from the inside out rather than from the outside in, you're going to feel more comfortable and experience a transition in a more organic way. So I really advise sitting with those feelings before you get all deep into your goals and your lists and, what here are the steps kind of a thing. And two, I mentioned about, raising your tolerance for risk or learning to manage risk. I think that's so important if you're going to transition to being into a really creative career. You do have to be open to failure and rejection, which we said, because it's how you learn and grow as an artist. It's how you play in that sandbox. You have to accept all that. You just need to start out accepting that. Don't fear it. Don't say, "Oh, I don't want this to happen. I don't want to be rejected." Well, just accept it. Accept it as part of the whole, experience, and do not connect your sense of self worth with money that you might earn from your art. You need to decouple that relationship because being an artist often has nothing to do with remuneration. It can, but it often does not, and that's not a value of its worth. Making your art is something that's worth doing for its own sake.
Nice. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, because I feel like as an artist, sometimes we can be so caught up on like one thing or we can try to, like you mentioned, try to do so much like at once, but like you said, just taking the time to do that, finding the right community and people that will help sort of build you in your career because it's not something that you can just do by yourself, like sometimes you have to rely on other people and just continuing to build that relationship, I think is also very important. So thank you for sharing that. Um, could you describe the importance of vulnerability in the creative process?
So to be an artist is by definition to be vulnerable because to make art in really almost any form, we're getting in touch with deep feelings, deep emotions, wounds, trauma, all kinds of experiences that inform our art because we turn reality into art. So we go through that kind of transformational process. So uh, vulnerability comes in so many different forms with respect to any creative process. I think one of the things that you need to think about is to be open to not knowing. Making art can often come a place of not knowing. I don't know how to do this. I don't know when I will be finished. I don't even know what my beginning looks like. I'm not sure what my process is. There's so much here I don't know about this thing that I'm committing to. And you have to be comfortable with a prolonged state of not knowing. And that's a vulnerable place to be. Again, particularly because of the culture that we're in. We're in a culture that values, look at AI. We're in a culture that demands answers, right? We're all about answers and we want them fast. but being an artist is about being in a prolonged state of not knowing. So that's important. And, you can't peer into the future as an artist necessarily or even plan for it. Things happen. Inspiration hits when it hits. Things fall apart when they fall apart. Sometimes we have to start over after a prolonged period and you didn't know that was going to happen. That's a vulnerable place as well because we want to have a beginning, a middle, and end and sort of get there. And you have to be vulnerable enough to recognize that you're not in control of all those things. There's a lot that's just, the mystery of making art and where it comes from and, how we turn our imagination into some kind of reality or interpretive reality. And and of course, you just have to be very emotionally authentic and honest with yourself and with the people that you're sharing your work with, because there's a lot of vulnerability to sharing work as well. So that certainly is the name of the game here, and you have to sign up for all of that.
Is there any final advice or last minute um, tips or tricks that you want to share to up and coming artists out there or current artists out there that you would like for them to know?
Sure. No tricks. There are no tricks. No tricks. I've got some do's and don'ts, but I want to start with the don'ts. And again, I'm reiterating here, but I want to drive this home. Do not look to social media for validation or role models. That's not where true art making begins. So I think that you don't want to use that as a starting point. Don't expect friends and family to support you unconditionally. They may be your adversaries and not your allies, as I noted. Don't expect quick results or overnight success, which, seems obvious, and yet that's what we sort of hope for anyway. And do connect with the practice that really excites your passion. Do what lights you up. Do what makes you feel very alive. Do respect your craft and work at it. Making art is really hard. We're not all born doing it perfectly. We have to learn our craft. We have to practice. We have to make mistakes. We have to get better. Respect your craft and do the work. And finally, do things that terrify you because you need to be scared sometimes to really have your best creative breakthroughs. Don't play it safe. That's what I'd say.
Thank you for tuning in to the Troubled Artists podcast. Have a great day.